I'm not one of those chefs that's like, this is what we do, you're coming here, this is what you're going to have. Ultimately, if we can make the guests feel like they've been looked after at the best level, they've had just what they wanted, they weren't forced to have anything they didn't want, then that's what we'll do.
To celebrate 500 episodes of Dirty Linen, I wanted to do something special, really special. I thought I'd spend a week at a restaurant that has been an extremely special place for Melbourne milestones for more than 20 years. Vue de Monde was founded by a fiercely ambitious, bolshy young chef, Shannon Bennett, in 2000. From its beginnings in a tiny terrace in Carlton, it moved first to the city and then in 2011 to its current home on level 55 of the Rialto Towers. Today's guest is the executive chef of Vue de Monde, Hugh Allen. Hugh came to the restaurant, he's come back to the restaurant to take on that role in 2019 when he was just 23. He's certainly one of Australia's chefs to watch. Hugh, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for helping me celebrate my milestone, but it's definitely not about me. It's now all about you. Tell us what it's like to be the executive chef of a restaurant that has such an important place in Australian culinary culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I think it's sort of a bit of a chef's dream to run a place like that, where you can. You're not, I guess, in a sense, for me, it was my first ever sort of executive chef job, or sort of big job. So to be able to walk into a sort of established place, it was a much more comforting experience than if I was having to start something complete from fresh. So, but yeah, it's just a really amazing thing. We have a really big, amazing team, and the venue's awesome. So no, it's a pleasure every day, really.
From that open kitchen, with views, the same views that the customers have essentially out over the city. I mean, it's what does it feel like to come to work every day?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty used to it now after multiple years looking at it, but it's such a better way of working. Generally, kitchens are hidden at the back in a stainless steel cage with no windows, so it's kind of the polar opposite. You can, the whole day you're looking out over, big, large, huge windows outside. So even though, we might do, a big day, it's, you don't feel like you're sort of trapped in some sort of stainless steel kitchen. You really feel like you're part of, you're part of the room, you're part of the, the outside almost. So yeah, it's a much better work experience, a way of working for sure. Also, it's just nice to have beautiful windows as well.
Yeah, I mean, you just probably, as much as you're used to it, I reckon you never get sick of that sunset.
No, the sunset's sick, for sure. I still I've taken photos every night. It's a nice sunset. If you look through, if I scroll through my phone, it's just literally dog, something else, dog, sunset, dog, sunset.
It's great. It sounds a bit like mine, except mine's dog, sunrise, food, dog. So you were working at Rockpool as a very young apprentice when you first set your sights on Vue de Monde. Can you tell me about your walk after work from Rockpool and how you encountered Vue de Monde first?
Yeah, sure. So I did obviously looked up to Vue de Monde a lot. Shannon was, probably the biggest, hottest chef when I was growing up, and looking to start in working in kitchens. But I got started at Rockpool for my first sort of year and a half of my apprenticeship, 2 years of my apprenticeship, and then I would always walk home, sort of cross the Yarra, and then walk past the Rialto, and in the downstairs there used to be a TV screen above the host desk with a video of the kitchen. From the service kitchen upstairs, and I'd always walk past and stop and watch the TV for a little bit and think, what a beautiful kitchen. I wish I could work there one day. It was just to be able to work. It was a big goal for me just to be able to get in there one day. And then, I'll do that. Most nights when I walk home, just walk past, look up the screen, watch the chefs upstairs for a little bit, and then go home. So just when I got the opportunity to eventually work there, that was, pretty awesome for me as it was. So
yeah. But when you first worked at Vue de Monde, you didn't actually get the great view, and you weren't actually in that kitchen, were you?
No. Well, you got to start somewhere. No, I was my first job. I basically was like, I'll just do anything, just to get in sort of in the door. So my first job was basically like we have a kitchen in the basement, called Level A, and I would just be like the little dude that would like bring up everyone's stuff and unpack stuff and scale fish and just sort of all the shitty jobs and all the sort of just receivables and like very little cooking, to be honest. But that was kind of my first, first little bit for quite a while. I think it's like a year off my head, but yeah, I was there for quite a while. And yeah, literally it was just sort of the little helper.
Did you get any opportunities to work upstairs to be actually seen by people?
Not really. Occasionally I'd come up on like a Friday night. I'd just run around and do a little bit of service, but not really. Yeah, not at the start. But I think that gave me a good sort of real good foundation of the restaurant, because for my first year, I literally was just like unpacking deliveries and bringing things up for people and scaling fish and like doing a little bit of butchery and stuff like that. So I wasn't really involved in service at all. But when I eventually got to this, moved upstairs full time to do more service side, I really had a really good understanding of how things work. If things weren't delivered, how could I get, work it out, or who the contacts were. Like I think it was actually, in hindsight, like I was like, oh, why am I doing this? I want to be more chefy. But in hindsight, I think it was a really positive way of starting.
It's interesting because, a lot of people would perhaps be impatient. They might even move to a different restaurant if they weren't getting, that daily experience that they thought they wanted. Do you think that that's a bit of a danger in the industry these days, that people do sometimes progress very quickly or are happy to jump from place to place?
Yeah, I think for sure, like there's definitely be a change, like, especially since COVID. Like there's so much option for chefs, because there's been obviously there's a shortage globally of chefs around. So everyone's fully aware they could get a job tomorrow somewhere else. So there is, I guess, for better and for worse, but I guess more sense of entitlement, or like, I want to be doing that now. That's not what I was expecting. This is what I want, and I'll just move if I can't get it. And so there is definitely much more jumping job. Not for us, to be honest. Like most of our chefs have been there 3-4 years. Like we've really got a sort of, Danny, you probably know most of them, to be honest. Through your time. So we have a really long-term team mostly, but there is definitely a these days much more moving around and much more wanting to do more earlier on, which in one way it's, I guess you could say, it's just them being ambitious, but it's also I think the expectation sometimes that is it's my second year working in the kitchen, I should be doing the meat roast or doing the meat prep. Like it's just, when I was an apprentice, it was not the case. Like it just wasn't that way. Like, and that wasn't that long ago, but that just wasn't the way. Like you would, I kind of like that. Like in when you see documentaries about chefs in Japan and stuff, and they, for like 5 years, they literally just do like washing rice and unpacking deliveries and like fish prep, but they don't actually get to do any of the other jobs for years until they like really master that. And there's two sides. I think like people should be, kept being engaged and kept being motivated and kept doing new things. Or at the same time, I really feel like you should be able to master, before you move on. You should be master your tasks in that field before you start to do, try to do everything. But yeah, it's hard these days because you have to work. It goes both ways. Whatever the employee wants, it's important. Whatever the employee wants is important. So
yeah, it's, people might look at you're 27 now, you're executive chef of a top restaurant, and think that you've sort of rushed to the top. But can you just give us a sense of your career, like how old you were when you started, and just give us a little potted history?
I sort of when I started doing some work experience. I was in school, so I was like 15 at Rockville, and then I started my apprenticeship. After that year finished, I was probably 16 when I officially started my apprenticeship, and then I did so year and a half, 2 years there. So then I think it was like nearly 18 when I started at Vue, and then I did 3 years at Vue again, starting downstairs, just real basic stuff, and then eventually getting upstairs. And I feel like once I got upstairs, like I did move pretty quickly around. I was, pretty confident. Like I picked it up pretty quickly. And when I finished my apprenticeship, so I was at Vue for about 3 years, and I stayed on a little bit after my apprenticeship, but I'd always wanted to live overseas and move overseas just as a life experience, if anything. But obviously I'd always look to Noma, and all that was when they were winning best restaurant in the world constantly, and all these things, and publishing heaps of amazing books, and for me, and obviously they just set the trend of cooking in the last decade, so it made sense that I want to go straight to the source. So yeah, basically I just got a plane ticket and a working holiday visa, and just went to Copenhagen, and just did everything I could to try to get a job there, which was wasn't easy. Like, it was a drawn out process. I did different bits and bobs, lying about different things. Just to really get my foot in the door. But then eventually I did a couple of weeks when I got to Copenhagen and Noma, and then they were happy to do Noma Australia, which was this was 2015, and then Noma Australia was 2016. So in January. So I'd moved to Copenhagen and got a lease and everything. I was like, oh, I'll be back. Actually, I'll be back in Australia around that time. So, if you need extra bodies or whatever, just I would happily come and just help out. Like, not paid or anything, just basically just trying to get my foot in the door. But I had no reason or want to come back here. I just literally got to Copenhagen and got a lease and everything. But I didn't have a job, obviously. So then I flew back to Sydney. I'm not from Sydney either. I've never spent much time in Sydney then. I was just staying at like a hostel or something. I was, so I did a couple of weeks work experience, I guess helping out more so than work experience. And then I was sort of at the right place at the right time, and someone left or walked out. I can't remember the exact story, and I went on to do some other things. I was to travel through France for a few months, and then I got a text from the head chef, Ben, and he said, "Oh, like, we're looking for someone now to join the team." And I was in Copenhagen, probably 5 minutes from the restaurant, but I didn't want to look like a weirdo. They're just hanging out in Copenhagen and hoping for a job. So I was like, "Yeah, no problem. I'll be there next week." I'll fly over. I'll be there next week. But I was already, I was 10 minutes away from Copenhagen, from the restaurant. So, yeah.
It's so crazy, Hugh. I don't know if it's quite clear to everyone listening, but basically you didn't have a job, but you went to Copenhagen and you took out a 12-month lease just because you reckoned you were going to bother them until they gave you a job. Then you just you just basically followed the restaurant to Sydney and lurked around Sydney waiting to get you're like a Noma stalker. And then you went back to Copenhagen. You had your lease already because you were that confident or silly that you were.
I was like, I think I've always I'll work it out. I'll just work it out. But yeah, and then, but I didn't want to seem like a creepo that was like just stalking them around. So that's why I was like, oh yeah, I'll fly over, no problem. Like, I'll be there in a week. I feel like I was just like, I was just loitering, hoping for a job. Like, they'll come across as strange. So, but it's where I wanted. It's really, really where I wanted to go and be. And I just had my mindset on that. And I think if I didn't get into that restaurant, I would have been disappointed. I just would have been disappointed. So yeah, so that's what I did. But that was, even though that was only 2015, or 7 years ago, I still feel like that would be really hard to do now. That kind of, just rocking up and let me, just I'm happy to help out kind of thing. Like now there's a lot of tape around things, so I was sort of definitely a bit of the right place at the right time as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what would you say to a young chef who, it's not as easy to do a stage at places? There's obviously a lot of attention on paying people properly for hours worked, which is great. But the flip side of it is that it does mean that stories like yours would be harder to live out now. I mean, what would you say to a young chef who perhaps has the same ambition and desire? How would they make their way?
It's just, it'll be harder for sure. Like it's going to be, because the risk of now a restaurant, some countries don't allow interns unless it's through an educational thing. So, or like staging unless it's through like an educational, through a TAFE or something like that. So I'm pretty sure the States don't allow it and a bunch of other countries don't allow it. So it is now much harder just to be able to be like, hey, I'm going to New York and can I go spend a week at, or per se or whatever. Like you just can't do that now, or it'd be much more difficult unless you knew a chef or something, or like you're friends with someone that was a senior chef there and they'll let you come to hang out for a bit. But 10 years ago it was so normal just to be like traveling, and then wherever you were, you might be in Japan and then someone that works at an amazing omakase restaurant or something, and be able to go spend a week there. Or for me, like I went through France for a few months, and I was just staging a bunch of 3-stars and more casual places and whatnot. I didn't speak a word of French. They didn't speak to me, but like we just we worked it out. And it was just, not only was it an amazing cooking experience and just be able to see being a big Parisian 3-star, but also just a cool life experience. Just just getting on the metro, getting really cliche, but like getting a croissant in the morning, getting a little coffee, getting on the metro. Walking through Paris, going to a little, back door of a 3-star Michelin restaurant, doing a week there. Did I learn much? No, I learned nothing. Like I don't remember anything. I was potting peas and stuff, but it wasn't about that. It was just an amazing, life experience as a young 18, 19-year-old in Europe. First time, without my parents overseas, just throwing myself in the deep end. For me, like I feel like I matured heaps during that period. And if I didn't have those experiences by myself in Europe, trying to set myself up, I don't think I could have been 23, 24 and coming back and taking over sort of a large, high-end restaurant. I think because I had those, big life experiences when I was younger, well, even, I'm still young, but even younger, that really gave me maturity and just like more experience, not in the cooking side, but just as a person, just as a human in the industry. So yeah, it's definitely more difficult, but I'd still say like you just go work out where if there's ways you can get in there, if a chef or something, or if you can do it through some sort of program now. And still just try to immerse yourself and don't worry too much about if you go and you just potting peas or something, because if you think about too much about what the jobs you're doing, like you're missing the point. The point is just to see and be and feel the energy of a restaurant and see, the different setups. And you might not think you're learning something, but you are, like how they're packing stuff away, or how, the fridges are, like the walk-in cool rooms, like how do they break them down, or, different setups, different equipment you might be able to use. Like even if you feel like I'm not, doing the meat section in the service kitchen, I thought that's what I'd be doing, you'd still be picking up stuff without really knowing it. And down the line in your career, you'll start doing stuff. You're like, oh shit, that's I'll do that like that, and you don't even realize, but that's where you picked it up on different experiences you've done. Yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, for the junior chefs at Vue de Monde, what kind of experience do you think they're getting? What is it? What's good about it as a place to work?
Well, obviously the kitchen's like awesome. It's an amazing environment. Produce and everything we use, there's no compromise. Like everything's the best of the best in terms of ingredients and products. Everything comes in, like nothing comes in frozen or already prepped or portioned, or everything's done from scratch. And then just the team, like the management team, which I'm sure will be on this podcast, but they're like again, I've staged and worked in some of the best places in the world, and I really do think that the team we have at the restaurant is really truly world class. From the we have 2 master sommeliers, Dorian and Carlos. There's only 250 something in the world, dead or alive, that have ever passed it. The depth of knowledge and experience in wine, making, production, aging, and also wine service in a restaurant. That level of expertise is very rare and extremely. Even in Australia, there's only like 5 or 6 in Australia, and there's 2 at the restaurant. So if you were to work in the front of house or in the wine team, these Dorian and Carlos doing service nearly every day. So you're immersing yourself in a place where there's only a handful in Australia, or not even one hand in Australia full, and only probably, I don't know, there's probably 200 alive in the world. So that's the wine side, that's incredible. In the kitchen side, we've got Marsh, Chris, his first name. He worked at some amazing restaurants around the world. Restaurant Gordon Ramsay, 3 Michelin star. Real classic fundamentals in a restaurant. A real mature, stable leader. Doesn't forget things, doesn't miss things. Just really consistent. And amazing head chef. Got Claire, Dutch Claire. She worked at 11 Madison Park in New York, and a bunch of other really top restaurants in Netherlands. Michael, he worked with me at Noma. He's an intern when I was at Noma, and then he stayed on and was a section leader at Noma, and then came back and joined us. The teams. Just Hugo again worked at the general manager. Worked at Dinner by Heston, Restaurant Gordon Ramsay, opened Dinner by Heston in Melbourne, restaurant manager at Vue de Monde, now the general manager, but like the sweetest, nicest, most caring, sharp, schmick, legend of a guy. And his brother, Carlos's brother, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but they are, they're 2 brothers on the floor, and then Raj is just, he came from, bars and pub background, but he's the best with guests you've ever seen. He'll go, to another level. One time he literally made there was a family with a young girl. She was probably like 4 or 5, and she was brought a little sheep soft toy with a sheepy, was the sheep's name. And Raj literally organized a 14-course tasting menu for the sheep. Like mini soup, like mini cheese platter, tiny little souffle in like an espresso cup when everyone else got their large souffle, like baby portions of everything for the little sheep, because the little girl didn't want Sheepy to miss out. Just like that unreasonable level of guest experience. Raj just goes to another level, sometimes too far. Sometimes we have to be like, tone it down, Raj, you're going too much. But he's just like, if he can do anything for the guest, like to try to get the wow factor, he just like, there's no limits for him. Like,
Raj, put away the sewing machine. You are not going to make an outfit for Sheepy on the dining floor tonight.
Honestly, I would not be surprised. Like, literally, like I saw he started buttering in an espresso cup. I was like, are you making a mini souffle? He's like, yeah, chef, we are. So like he's sometimes he goes too far, but he's just. He's got, no matter what his days or what's happened to him outside work, he's just, whatever he can do to blow a guest away, he does it. So, if working in that environment, we have such, incredible leaders and strong chefs. You just pick up so much and just best practice and commitment to the industry and to looking after the guests. And we also just have like a good culture. Like, I'm sure, Danny, you've been up many times. We just have a good vibe upstairs. We have a good culture, and we only employ people that want to be part of what it's been built on, the culture we've worked hard to build. If we ever have someone start and they're not fitting in, or they're just like sort of it just has there's this starts to be issues with different people and hurt them or whatever it is. We just deal with that straight away. Like, we don't just deal with people that want to ruin a really good tight knit culture, because you're together for so long. If you on a day you do lunch and dinner, yeah, it's quite it changes, but it's at least 12 hours together. It's a long time to be together in a kitchen or in the front of house. So if someone's not fitting in, just dealing with that straight away. So yeah, we just keep it as like positive and fun as possible, and also just trying to pursue excellence in what we do, and give every guest as aspirational experience as we can. And yeah, you just, as a young chef, I think it's being immersed in all that is pretty special. Yeah.
And as a leader, Hugh, how have you grown into the role, and what sort of leader do you aspire to be?
Yeah, I'd say I'm still growing as a leader. I don't think that I'm no expert in leadership, but I think for me, it's just, I think I'm pretty kind. I'm a kind person. I'm not a yelly, screamy chef whatsoever. I'm very, I don't hold grudges on people. I'm not, I think if you spoke to anyone upstairs, you may have seen me scream or shout maybe 2 or 3 times in 4 years. It's just not something I do. And so, yeah, I think in that sense, it just, I always bring a positive energy. I think if you, as the leadership team, if you're negative, it's kind of contagious. I'm sure it's not just kitchens. I'm sure it's any workplace. But if a leader or the manager or the senior group is just being grumpy or just being a dick, it's just that's contagious, and that will the slightly less senior people will start being a bit like, oh, blah, 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 and then to the commies, and then the commies will be out to the apprentices, and then just that trickles down, that negativity, that it's that sort of cancerous, in-depth, toxic sort of behavior. Some people, if the leadership team is like that, it just trickles down. So I'm fully aware that what the mood is in the team, and how people want to react with each other is obviously comes from me and Chris and Hugo, and how we are and how we interact will have a very strong flow-on effect, and that sort of contagious effect to other staff. So I think for me, no matter what, again, one thing I think I'm good at is no matter what's happening, the team never will feel it themselves, or whatever stresses I have or whatever. They'll just think I'm the normal, calm, positive Hugh. They're not, they're never like, oh shit, what's chef's mood today? I hope he's in a good mood. It's, I really come in just trying to be as consistently the same. I think that's probably a strong suit, but I've got flaws obviously as well. So, but that's what you have a team for. So,
what about the ownership of the restaurant, Hugh? Because when you were drawn to the restaurant partly because of Shannon Bennett. When you came back to the restaurant, Shannon was still involved, but not long after you took over, the remainder of the restaurant was sold to the Far East group based in Singapore. How involved are they, and what's it like having offshore owners? We're
left to manage it and run it. Where we meet with them in terms of bigger picture stuff. If for example we're planning to do a big renovation this year, obviously they would have to approve all the spending and further investment. But in terms of a day to day, we don't. They're not. The reason they bought it is because they wanted the best practice, the best team they could get, and so they send people to us because they own different restaurants and different cafes and whatnot, but they send their staff to us to learn from us, and that's they bought Vue de Monde as more of an academy for because they're huge developers, and they own hotels and restaurants and different things, but they bought us as a place to send their people to come and work with us and learn from us, so that they're extremely respectful of everything we do, and I've never have, even during COVID, they're very supportive. Everyone that couldn't get JobKeeper, they matched JobKeeper. So for the non-Aussies or PR, they matched, they paid JobKeeper for them. Obviously, that wasn't, there's no expectation to that. So they're very respectful. They're very, kind. They let us go, and they really, appreciate the level we run at and what we do and what we strive to achieve. And they don't tell us, like, they never come and said, "Oh, Hugh, you need to start doing this," or, "Hugh, we want to start doing more covers," or, et cetera, et cetera. So, for me, like, I've had no negative experiences with them whatsoever.
But does the restaurant have to stand on its own feet financially?
Yeah, we do. Like, we're not raking in cash by any means, but we run independently. Like, we don't need any. They don't prod us up. But if we were to do, for example, the renovation or whatnot, that investment comes from them. It's not, we're not paying for that. We're paying them back essentially through, but it's just moving money around the same company, really. But we do stand up on our own feet, but no, they definitely heavily support the group for sure.
So, Hugh, I'd love to chat to you about creativity and dish development, because I imagine that's something that takes up a lot of your headspace. I mean, talk to me about how you think about creating new dishes. To be honest, like, one big one is just when we get bored. Like, sometimes a dish we put on and we just be like, no, this is not, we're not feeling it. A few weeks in, so we'll just change it immediately. And then obviously seasonality obviously drives, that forces our hands. So for example, asparagus is a very short season. Victorian asparagus is only, 6 weeks, 8 weeks at tops. So, once we only do that for 6-8 weeks. So then obviously we're working on other stuff, but we're always, I always try to think further in front. So, now we're starting to think about autumn, and we started working on autumn dishes and late summer dishes, which will change. And sometimes it's a real fluid thing. Sometimes, I've got a very strong idea in my head of a dish or, an ingredient that I want to work with and how I'm going to prep it. And sometimes, I have an idea, and then as I'm playing, it turns into something completely different and, like, 100% different to what originally the thought was. Sometimes I'm just chopping something on a bench in a certain way, and I'm thinking, oh, that kind of looks cool. Maybe that could work its way into a presentation or something. So there's no, like, set way or anything, but it's definitely what I would consume most of my time in terms of when I'm in the kitchen. It's definitely what my main focus is. I think it's one of my stronger suits. I think Chris is much better at, ordering and rostering and making sure the maintenance is done and all the equipment's there. That kind of more administrative thing. He's definitely his stronger suit over me. And I think, I'm quite a creative person and just that's what I focus on. So, do you get inspiration from things outside of the kitchen when that might fold into a dish?
Yeah, like, for 100%. I'd say the main one at the moment is being plants, like native plants like gum nuts and bottle brushes, and I'm working on a Banksia pod dessert at the moment. So, like, just the natural form of a product is is beautiful in itself. So, for example, the gum nut we done for a while, that was literally my mum during COVID. She went on a walk and there was a storm. It was like one of those big storms and the power lines fell down. And she brought all these gum nuts. She brought home all these gum nuts as, like, a little decoration for the dining table. I was like, well, that kind of looks good, because I was sitting on the dining table and I was like, that could be a cool little, petit four to finish. And then I found a sculptor who makes bronze. And when you make bronze, you need to make molds and then melt the wax out of the mold and then recast it, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, could you make a mold with these gum nuts using these ones my mum collected but don't obviously just melt the wax out, but obviously don't cast it in bronze, just give me those molds. And she was like, yeah, absolutely. And so I sent off those gum nuts to her in Sydney, and she made these sort of silicon wax replicas of these gum nuts. And so the gum nuts we serve, we fill them with, it changes, but at the moment it's a roasted wattle seed, caramelized white chocolate sort of moussey thing. But those gum nuts are identical to, the ones my mum brought home and on a walk. They've been molded off those exact gum nuts. So just that using natural form, I think for me is the most beautiful. But you just see stuff, whether it's color combinations or whether it's a gallery or for example, one time I saw a concert. Oh, no, I was watching Star Wars, and at the start of Star Wars, as you all know, like the opening credits when the song comes on, like you instantly know what it is. You instantly get excited. You're instantly like, sick. We're watching Star Wars, and that's purely from that song. And so it sort of got squashed by COVID, but we might revisit. But I was speaking with the MSO about making a theme. I sound a bit tacky, but a theme song for Vue de Monde. So when you're in the lift, there's some sort of song which is only ever played in that lift. So when you get in, it's like that opening credits of Star Wars. You suddenly get like, oh, fuck, we're going to Vue de Monde. That's how exciting, it comes real and then the lift opens and there's Hugo's there to bring you into your table, and every time you might not notice it the first time, but if you come once a year or every few years, you might start to know that song, and that was just from watching Star Wars. So like it can be from any. It's super weird. Like it's just anything. Yeah. It got pretty far down the line. Like we were meeting with composers and stuff like that, and then just sort of COVID happened and didn't get there. But we might revisit it for the reno. But yeah, that was just like one idea. But that was literally watching Star Wars. But then it can be my mum bringing home some gum nuts after a storm. So it's very all over.
Yeah, so interesting. So, I mean, Hugh, Vue de Monde is, like, as you mentioned, like a place some people might come to once a year. Some people might come to once in their life. Some people might think it's completely out of reach and they'll never go there. But at the same time, you do have regulars. Can you talk about the diners that come to you? Just how you think about them, what kind of experience you try to create for them.
Yeah, well, we're actually speaking of this yesterday in briefing. Most of our guests aren't the ultra elite of Melbourne. I think that's a common misconception that we're just for the high, fine dining, just for these high net worth individuals and it's for the ultra elite of Melbourne. But we do 55 guests a day or a night. Maybe 250 guests a week. Times that by 52. I don't know if you got a calculator, but it's probably it's thousands of guests a year. There's not that many. There's not thousands of people that are multi, 100 millionaires that can just spend heaps of money on every night at restaurants. So, fine dining runs on everyone being able to come. And 90% of our guests are normal families, couples, people by themselves that are either celebrating a milestone or just really wanted to have a really exciting, fun night, and they haven't seen their guests for a long time, or they just graduated, or it's a big anniversary. But it's nothing to do with, for them. It's not. They're not the ultra rich. We're just coming for a Wednesday night dinner because you can. It's something really special, and most of our guests book 3 months, in advance. So we're fully aware that every guest sitting in the restaurant, or nearly every guest, generally booked 3 months ago. Generally, this is a lot of money for them to spend on dinner, and people work hard for their money, and also now things are getting much more expensive. So it's a lot of money to trust us with, and to trust us with their big celebration. So we understand it's a big responsibility to make sure that we provide because we know they've been so looking forward to it coming in. They're texting their friends. They may have gone and bought a new suit or new dress or something so they can really look good, and they plan it, and they this is just what people do before they come to top places, and especially people that don't do it all the time, and it's a really precious thing for them. So yeah, we fully understand when people are coming with us. We don't even though we do it every single night, lunch or dinner sometimes. The guests coming in, they don't care. They booked 3 months ago. It's their big occasion. They've saved up for it. They've gone and bought their nice new shirt. and that's for us. We really need to treat them like it's the first ever time we've done this, and we're gonna try to give them, blow them away, but for us, our guests aren't. They're definitely not the ultra elite or anything. It's a mixture of everyone.
Yeah. So what about the people that do come again and again? Is it because, you've got a tasting menu? Is it hard to give them an experience that always feels fresh?
It's definitely harder because we do have quite a few regulars, to be honest. But they almost become part of, they have our numbers. They text us, they just become more like they're just coming to our house for dinner. They're so comfortable with us. They might come, 10, 12 times a year. We just get to know them really well. So it's less about like, oh, this is this big surprise of the souffles come in. Like, obviously they've had that so many times. But it's just, for them it changes and they become, they're becoming just more part of like coming over for our house for dinner more so than coming for the big, experience. But the menu changes, regularly enough that most people, there's always something new. Like, it's unless you came, within a few weeks of each other, like you generally have always a different menu. And we get to know what people like. We got one guest, Patrick, for example. He hates Australian cheese, but he's just a knob. Like, we love him dearly, but he just got this thing against Australian cheese, which is just Patrick. Like, it's just how he is. So Raj will go to the market every time we know he's coming and buy a big spread of French cheeses, super stinky French cheeses, just for him. And he loves that. So he'll come in. All the table will have. He's a dairy farmer as well, which is ironic. But all the table will have, because we only serve Australian cheeses on the cheese trolley, really amazing local cheeses. But he'll sit there and happily have his big French stinky cheeses and his lavash and fruit bread, and he's happy as hell. So everyone's different, but we'll for those people that come all the time, we'll personalize the experience to whatever they prefer. So. I'm not one of those chefs that's like, this is what we do. You're coming here. This is what you're going to have. For me, ultimately, it's there is a point where it crosses and you're like, no, we're not going to do that. But ultimately, if we can make the guests feel like they've been looked after at the best level, they've had just what they wanted. They weren't forced to have anything they didn't want. Then that's what we'll do. So we do have regulars, and we try to keep it fun with them, but it gets to a point where they're just almost, it's like they're like Patrick's, like he's almost like family to us now. So yeah.
Love it. What about Shannon, Hugh? I mean, how important a figure is he in your life?
Well, the relationship's changed. Like, we're more, I'd say, friends now than sort of colleagues or anything. But we speak. We'll text once a week back and forth about random stuff. If he's in Melbourne, we'll always catch up and grab dinner or a drink or something. And he's just, if I would go to Byron, I'll crash with him. And like, I guess I've known him for over 10 years now. So it's gotten to the point where we just we've known each other for a long time. We have very strong mutual respect for each other. We trust each other, and I still look up to him and what he's achieved. From he grew up in West Meadows or something, a real working class area of Melbourne, and then on his own built a multi-million-dollar restaurant and then sold it really successfully, and it's done really well outside of the restaurant world as well. And he's just I really look up to him as someone who came really from not much financially wise to being super successful person. He's only he's been around for a long time, but he's still only like 47 or something like that. Maybe he's 47, 48, but as a role model, he's incredibly inspiring of what he's achieved, and from where what he started and where he is now. So, but we're definitely just we're mates. Like, when we speak now, it's not like we chat less about work and more about life stuff than anything else.
What about your own ambitions, Hugh? you'd have to be an ambitious person to get to the position that you're in, even though you do come across as pretty easygoing. What do you see for yourself? What's the path you lay out before you?
I take it as it comes, but I always have a set of, I do definitely have things I want to achieve myself. But yeah, I just take it as it comes. Generally the opportunity, you know when an opportunity is right, and to try to grasp it, and when one's to let go. But I definitely want to, Vue's a big part of my life, and that will remain. But I definitely will eventually want to, build something, and another, whatever it ends up being, but from scratch as well. Just because I would want to, and just really build something super special that I've sort of crafted from the beginning. And sort of create my own legacy in a way, like Shannon has. But yeah, Vue will always be part of my has been for a long time and will continue to be so.
Hugh, I know that Robbie Bell's been an important person to you through your career. You worked with him when you started at Rockpool. And yeah, he's been a guest on this podcast. But I also listened to his podcast that you were on, and I thought that was really a really nice snapshot. You chatted to him while you were working at Noma, and I would love you to tell the story that you told him about the first time you took a dish to a table at Vue de Monde.
Yeah, well, I think I got away with this one, but no, so I was downstairs. I didn't have much service experience whatsoever, and it's probably Corey or someone was like, Hugh, take this dish to table 7, and it was in there's a little sauce that was spooned on the table, and I was so nervous, like incredibly nervous, and I was so like shaky, like it's like when you've been in a fight or like a confrontation and you're shaky, and you're like your legs are a bit jelly, and you sort of like you're like just so on edge, and like you just like. You're just like so anxious and jelly like in your body. And I was like that, and I'm taking this copper pot with sauce in it and just shaking like, all hell. I don't even I wasn't comfortable with the dish was. Like I just should not have been taken to the table.
Did you know where table 7 was?
I know what table 7 was. I know that. That's because there's only 17 tables, so it's pretty easy to remember that. But I was just so nervous. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I sourced the first guy rather successfully. And then the next one, I just somehow dropped the copper pot all over the table, all over the guests. Probably spilt wine. Like I just made a shambles of the whole situation. And it's like I didn't even want to turn around and to get eye contact, because table 7's like directly in front of the kitchen, sort of against the window, so there's no height in it. And it was just like shame. I turned around. I'm pretty sure Corey didn't say anything, to be honest. I can't remember if he saw it or didn't see it, but I'm pretty sure. Either I felt like I got away with it. Obviously, everyone else saw it at the front of the house, and everyone saw it because I had to clean it up. I'm pretty sure we had to comp the guy's meal, but I don't know if Corey just let me go on that one and just didn't want to he knew that my shame and my embarrassment was enough. He didn't need to give me any more, shit for it. He knew that I would be going home broken and upset about it. But luckily, the two people I think were quite nice about it, but. And that was my first experience running food and dealing with the guests. So I guess it could only have gone up from there.
Well, you've definitely come a long way. And it's been a pleasure to watch the part of your journey that I've had the privilege to see. And I look forward to seeing what happens in the years to come. But thank you so much for spending time with us today on the podcast, helping me celebrate my milestone. Really appreciate your stories, your insights, and look forward to many more great meals.
You too. Thanks so much, Danny. All the best for everything, and 500 more podcasts.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Danny Vallant. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.